Okay, fourth year, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a technique that you can use when you're revising for your design and manufacture assessments. I should point out that this should not be an alternative to your normal way of revising for a subject, but should complement any revision that you do. Now, the technique is called assessment is for learning. And the idea is that you use an assessment with its associated marking scheme to help you learn more about the subject and increase your knowledge in relation to being able to answer questions in any assessment. So to illustrate this, I'm going to show you how you would use this technique in relation to this question here, which is part of question 8 in section 2 of the specimen paper. So the question says, the case insert was manufactured by vacuum forming. So you've got a picture of the insert for the pencil case, clearly made from plastic. You should recognise it as vacuum formed because we know that vacuum forming is good for producing trays and inserts and masks from our general revision. But to increase our knowledge of vacuum forming, we can actually use this question to do exactly that. So the question says the pattern contains the following features, state a manufacturing reason for each. Now, this is a plastic insert. They're talking about the pattern that would be used, the wooden pattern that would be used in when making this insert. So that pattern would have rounded edges, vent holes, and tapered sides. So in order to answer question 1, to give a reason for having rounded edges in the pattern, sometimes that can be quite difficult, to know even from your revision why that's the case. So what you want to do is you want to actually go to the marking scheme. This is question 8.1. So you don't need to go to a textbook for this. I'm actually using the assessment and its associated marking scheme to learn more about why the pattern would have rounded edges. Sorry, question 8. Question 8. Right, so question 8b1. So in the marking scheme, it gives acceptable statements that would achieve a mark for that question. So any of these answers would get a mark. But when you're using this technique, you need to make sure that you understand why these statements would get a mark. So for example, rounded edges will help to reduce stress on the plastic. What does that mean exactly? If you think about it, if you had a right angle corner and you pulled the plastic over the pattern, there would be increased stress right at that corner. So it's helping to reduce the stress around that corner. So that would be a suitable reason. Okay, another reason would be thinning. You know that if you had the right angle corner, it's pulling the plastic due to the vacuum and it's stretching the plastic more if it was a right angle corner than it would if it was round, which would be much more even in relation to the plastic wrapping itself around the pattern. Again, if you had a corner, 90-degree corner, and you vacuum formed it, that material thickness might change at the corner as it's being stretched around that 90-degree corner. And by using rounded edges, that will help to even out that stress. And then it reduces the risk of the insert sticking to the pattern. So you can imagine that if it was a 90-degree corner, it might stick. If it was at the corner when you try to remove it from the pattern, the insert from the pattern, and if it's rounded, then it's much easier to remove it and it won't stick to the pattern. So basically, any of these answers would get a mark, and by using this method, I have learnt more about why a pattern would contain rounded edges, right? So now I've got four acceptable reasons. You might want to write them all out on this section. And if you get a question like this again, you'll have an excellent level of knowledge to be able to answer it. So I've used the assessment to help increase my learning. If we look at vent holes, again, 1 mark for vent holes. So if the wooden pattern has vent holes, what would be the reason for having vent holes? So again, I would go to the assessment. Question 8. Right, if we don't really know and we need to learn about this, so here's vent holes here. And again, try to make sure that you understand why these statements would get a mark. So it says, ensures no air is trapped in the corners. Now that makes a lot of sense. As the plastic is, if it's quite a complex tray and you've got sort of internal shapes, where you've got the corner, although it's rounded, you want it, the air to be removed from there so it pulls it into that particular area of the pattern. And that's explained there. Ensures vacuum is created in internal parts of the insert. Ensure that no air is trapped in the corners. That's obviously another good reason. And ensure internal corners are formed accurately. So 3 acceptable answers. And we would actually just write these answers down, all 3 answers, when you're doing your revision. So I would write all 3 answers down there. But again, what are we doing? We're using the assessment itself to help to learn or to increase our learning about vacuum forming. And in this particular case, the advantages or the features associated with a wooden pattern that's used in vacuum forming. And you would do the same with tapered sides. Why would taper sides be used in a wooden pattern when vacuum forming? You want to go back to the assessment and look at the answers and learn from that particular exercise. Okay? And that is called assessment is for learning, where we're using an assessment and its associated marking scheme to help to increase our learning about the subject. Okay, thank you for listening.